I want to welcome Sharia de Castro today. Sharia is a dedicated educator that's making a real difference in youth development in the Virgin Islands. She has an education background quite extensive in Montessori studies. She also went to the Texas Christian University, and she went to H. Levitti Stout for community college. She currently serves as the CEO of Learn and Play, and I'll get Sharia to tell us a little bit more about that. And she's an elementary teacher at Century House Montessori School in the British Virgin Islands. Thank you so much for agreeing to meet with me today, Sharia.
It is my pleasure. I'm very happy to be here.
Awesome. So maybe you can tell me a little bit about Learn and Play.
Okay, so Learn and Play is something I developed as an educator, wanting to be able to, outside of my classroom in the wider community, facilitate an environment where children learn. And I believe that children learn best through purposeful play. And so using using tools and preparing that in a way that children are able to learn best in a hands-on way. And so that is my primary focus, to be able to provide these manipulative and tools to families and even teachers to help them along, but then also to be able to aid parents in any type of individual assistance they may need with their children, and even in terms of tutoring as well.
And you have you have a daughter as well?
I do. I have a 6-year-old, Anaya.
Fantastic. Okay. So maybe you could tell me, I'm just wondering, because we're doing this series just talking about kind of overcoming uncertainty and how we can help our children and youth. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about, after post-Irma, and now with the COVID, what kind of challenges you're seeing for the kids that you serve and educate, as well as the parents? Maybe you could talk a little bit about that, because there's been probably a lot of bit of homeschooling, some things done, and a lot of pivoting for people while they're trying to figure out what the next week will look like. So could you talk a little bit about the challenges that you've seen?
So I think the adjustment to homeschooling was certainly a big leap. It was quite a change. But I would say that I do believe most people managed to make the transition as best as they could.
Right.
And I think because it was our duty to support our students and our parents to make sure that that transition was as easy as possible. And so one of the things that we saw there was a huge disruption in their regular routine. And so we tried to encourage parents to get a routine at home, try your best to stick to it, but understand that every day won't be the same, because now you're homeschooling children in an environment where it isn't typical for learning. And so they would need those moments where they wake up today and it probably won't be the best walking day, but that's okay. And allowing them to walk in a way that is comfortable but still productive. I think one of the things that yes, there was a huge need for balance, even as we continue onward. And then understanding that even though we're focusing and catering to the academic needs of children, we're also thinking about their mental and emotional as well. So we had to make sure to provide that balance in terms of understanding where they are. Just as we are feeling it as adults, the uncertainty is looming, it's heavy, they are feeling it as well. And they just have to felt in a different way. So to be mindful of that and try to support them as best as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And how do you talk to kids about uncertainty? Because that can be difficult for parents and educators. Like we have our own stuff going on, and then the kids have their stuff. So it's a difficult conversation, isn't it?
It is a difficult conversation, but I do think it's a necessary one. Mm-hmm. One of the things I try to tell persons when I'm speaking about children is that children are whole beings. We like to think of them as these little people who have to grow up and then they'll eventually be this whole being. And that's not true. They're born as whole beings with feelings, with dreams, with visions, with goals. They grow over time, but they're already whole. And so we ought to treat them like that. And just as we're going through, they're going through. And so it may be a simple conversation to start the day. How are you feeling? If you're feeling overwhelmed, understanding, giving them that support that, okay, I do understand it's a very unusual time. It's difficult for mommy as well, but yes, I'm here to support you. And just making sure that there's an open line of communication so that children feel safe speaking about their fears. And then once they've done that, accommodating them in a way that you are supporting them through that.
Have you had some tips that you found parents have found really useful during this time for doing the homeschooling? Like, are there some things that you, practical things that you suggest to parents quite regularly?
I did. One of the main ones for me was making sure they set up a workspace at home for the
Ah,
child, even if it's a table or it
mhm.
could be a beanbag in a cozy corner, or but wherever it was, that space was set up so that once it was time to walk, the child knew that they could go there and it meant that it was time to walk. And also having something personal put up in that space so that it felt memorable for them, and they knew whether it was a painting, a sewing, something that they felt like they put there to help to personalize the space would also help to make it a little bit more cozy for them. Because we have to understand that for them, home isn't about learning typically, not as
Yeah,
it has been over the last several months. So
right.
we would have had to find ways to make it comfortable for them in a way that they could be engaged. And it also helps parents to be able to keep an eye on them. It has to be in a space that was visible to mommy and daddy, especially parents who are working from at home as well. And
Right.
then also trying to create a routine where they did most of their academic work in the morning period, and
Mhm.
then giving the afternoon more time for family time, games, more interactive, go for an outdoor walk, nature walk, things of that sort. I would suggest to make sure that they're still getting activity outside of the home as well, especially cooking. If, for example, in my classroom, every week we would do our Zoom classes, and we had a schedule of cross-curricular activities that were going into the sciences, language, math, and by Friday it would always take them into the kitchen to cook or bake, as we
Awesome.
would do in the classroom.
Practical life. Yes.
Yeah,
Did you
practical
have,
classroom is so important.
yeah, absolutely. And have you had much feedback, like from parents that are, you know, finding that they're maybe putting a lot of pressure on themselves? Like, are you sort of having to do some of that? It's okay. It's okay if you don't get it done, or encourage those that are really having a hard time getting going?
Very much so. One of the things that I told parents is they are not going to ruin their child's lives in a few months. It's not
Okay.
to
Right.
see as educators to get them back on track once we have them back in the classroom. We just
Right.
needed some interim support at home. So I told them all the time, it's not up, we're not pressuring you, we're here to support you. However, we can help, we're here to do that. But I think they needed that reassurance as well, because they were typically thrown into a pool and asked to just swim and get there. And it was impossible for them to do that without having teachers as almost like life jackets supporting them through the process.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that. We just need interim support. That's a
This is,
nice, non-pressured way to put it. Sure, that's
yes,
great.
because I keep seeing a lot of posts on social media saying that children are behind and oh my gosh. And I just don't believe that. As an educator, I know that sometimes life happens, and
Yeah.
as in the real world, we teach children according to where they are. And right now, their emotional needs surpass anything else. And so thankfully, we were able through online education to be able to reach them academically as well. But it was important to strike a balance and for parents to understand that your children are not behind terribly, that they can't catch up. It's the curriculum. We'll address it once we're back in the classroom.
Yeah, it's that being a little bit flexible, right? That's great. What inspiring stories have either you heard personally or from your students that have helped you during these difficult times? Like, are some stories or some tales of resilience come up for you that have been really helpful?
I think watching how well the children adjusted to being independent. They're already independent learners in the
Yeah.
classroom, and I see it every day, but parents don't get to. And so it was a huge eye opener for their parents to see them
Right.
working at home and seeing how they function every day in the classroom. Lots of my parents were really blown away by that. It's one thing when we share the Montessori way, for example, but it's another thing when they witness it every single day. So I'm very happy that the children were able to spend that time at home with parents. Another thing that came out of it was the significant amount of family time that parents have been able to enjoy during these difficult times, and just taking greater joy in the little things that we
Yeah.
tend to take for granted sometimes, and appreciating those things as well.
Yeah, absolutely. What are you looking forward to this fall?
I am looking forward to seeing my students for sure, seeing them face to face, of course,
Yeah.
in the safest possible way. So
Yeah.
we have been working to prepare the environment to make sure that it is.
Yeah.
But I think they're going to be super happy to be back in the environment. I will be as well. And I'm just looking forward to see how we continue to implement and move education forward, because I think COVID gave us the opportunity to, for example, involve technology in education in a way that we haven't been able to do before. And so I don't think moving forward, it's getting rid of the technology and moving back to what it was. I think it's going to be it's going to be an amazing thing if we can do a mixture of the two and transform education going forward.
Absolutely. And I guess too, if anything, heaven forbid, but if there's second waves or there's a hurricane season that's difficult to traverse, then you're sort of ready, like how to do it this time. Like you've had, unfortunately, a lot of practice of being resilient. So you've got to move forward.
I think that's one of the main things. I mean, as people on a whole, the huge adjustment to change. Virgin Islanders, everyone living here in the BVI, we dealt with Irma, and now we're going through COVID. We say we are very resilient people, and that is so true. And I think now we get to benefit from that in terms of putting, as teachers, I saw a meme on Facebook a few days ago that says every teacher is going back into the classroom as a first year teacher this year.
Right. I can see that. Yeah.
But thankfully, we do have that experience from the last few months to step into this new year. And although we're preparing for in-person learning, we're also making sure we have a backup plan, as you said, if a second week were to come, that we're very prepared to resume Zoom lessons or Google Classroom or whatever it takes to make sure that children are still learning.
Well, fantastic. Thank you so much for meeting with me today. It's been an absolute pleasure to meet you and also chat with you. And really, I could see the passion that you have for your work. So very lucky students that you're returning to, and I'm sure you feel very blessed by them as well. So thanks so much for chatting.
Thank you so much for having me, Kelly.
My pleasure.